Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica from the 104.5 The Zone Studios. Around the NFL today, the New England Patriots have signed tight end Hunter Henry to a 3-year deal worth $27 million. And the NFLPA announcing that Detroit Lions special teamer and linebacker and former Tennessee Volunteer Jalen Reeves-Maybin has been elected as president by the Board of Player Representatives. Nashville Soccer Club back in MLS regular season play Sunday, hosting LA Galaxy at Geodis Park. 2 p.m. is the kickoff. Zone coverage starts at 1:30. And the Nashville Predators hit the road tomorrow at the St. Louis Blues at 11:30. It is NHL trade deadline day. The Preds have acquired a couple of depth forwards, including former Arizona Coyote Jason Zucker, and yesterday dealt Yakov Trenin to Colorado. College basketball, Tennessee wraps up the regular season at home against Kentucky Saturday, celebrating Senior Day after clinching the SEC regular season title this week. Tip-off at 3 p.m. Vol Network coverage on the Zone is at 2:30. Vandy wraps up the season at home against Florida for a 3:30 tip. And the Belmont Bruins face Northern Iowa this afternoon in the Missouri Valley Tournament quarterfinal. 2:30 is the tip-off. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Let's do this. Blaine and Mickey on a Friday. The Hitman is out today, so we called over to the offensive side. We got B-Hop here. We got a lot of offensive linemen talk to talk. So
Omaha.
Yes. So we called an audible. We got B-Hop here. He'll tell you he's been brushing up on these guys, so we'll get to all that. And just to start the show with some added pizzazz, we have brought in the executive producer of Titans Radio. That is Rhett Bryan, who joins us now.
Hello. I've never had pizzazz named and mentioned in my name, but I like that. That's good. I'll take it.
You're very
Especially
welcome.
on a Friday.
You're very welcome for that. Let's start with this. So Rhett has been to the Combine. He and Coach Mack are stacking the board, and there's lots going on. You want to start with Combine stuff or free agency stuff? Because Monday is the start of legal taper.
Let's start with free agency.
Okay.
Just because that's the nearest thing.
Okay.
So I had 3 free agents of the Titans of their own that I would have liked to have seen them re-signed and thought they should have re-signed for what it's worth, which is nothing. But Morgan Cox was one of those 3, and now they have extended him to signed him to a 1-year deal. And the other 2 are Azeez Alshire at linebacker, because I think that's a place, obviously it's a place where you need things. And continuity, stabilizing, those things. And I like the person as much as I like the player, and I think he could do well. And the obvious one is Danico Autry. I don't know what that looks like. And Danico's 34 years old now, or right at it. But Danico is a wily vet. He is a seasoned pro who knows exactly how to treat his body and take care of it. And that treatment staff and that, all those folks at Ascension St. Thomas Sports Park, he's told them exactly what he needs to help him get to a game. And I think, the production value's there. Like Danico he's been great ever since he came here.
He just had his best year ever.
I was so glad that they got him away from Indianapolis 3 years ago. So I would love to see those 3, but I have a couple of outside the market guys that I'm looking at too. One is Mike Owenu, and I think he's a guard, but he's played both guard and tackle, right guard and right tackle for the New England Patriots. He was a 6th-round pick of theirs out of Michigan in 2020, 6'3", 350. So they transition tagged Kyle Duggar, the safety, the other day at the deadline. And so this leaves him unprotected in this. Started 41 games, never allowed more than 3 quarterback sacks in a season. 656 snaps at right tackle. Last year, 194 at right guard, so he can bump in and out. Only was committed 10 penalties in his 4-year career. So clean player, available player. He's going to get a nice contract, but that's somebody I would like to see. And then the other one is a guy that made a profound impression on me, just the way he plays and the time that the Titans played the Carolina Panthers. And then there's a tie to the coaching staff, and that's linebacker Frankie Louvu. Frankie Louvu, undrafted in 2018 to the New York Jets. So he has worked with linebackers coach Frank Bush. He has worked with defensive coordinator Denard Wilson. They know this guy. 6'3", 236. 212 tackles in the last 2 seasons in Carolina. 12 and a half quarterback sacks in that span of time, 9 pass breakups, and a pick. Like that, when he played the Titans, I want to say he had like a dozen tackles. I mean, he was all over the place. 6-year man out of Washington State. And again, both of these guys heading into their prime. Owenu, the guard, 26 years old. Frankie Louvu, 27.
So what's your motivation with Mike Onwenu? Is it because of the price tag? He's under $900,000 on market value. Or?
Well, he's going to get a handsome contract, but they need help on the offensive line, period.
Sure.
And this is a guy that some people, especially in the New England market, didn't necessarily think would be available. They thought he might have been the tag candidate in New England. I think when you look at availability and production, like, is he the best guard in the world? No, I don't know, but I think he's very good and more than serviceable to be able to help this, because at the end of the day, Will Levis has got to be upright and flicking the wrist down the field to receivers and making this thing happen, and he can't do that if he doesn't have protection enough.
I asked that question, Mickey, because Connor Williams is out there on the board, $7 million.
Yeah.
So you don't want to spend that kind of money. I just wondered if you're just trying to get a value pick. Let's just say that.
Well, I think you're going to be surprised at what Owenu's going to get, because I saw one estimation, like a $48 million deal or something for a multi-year deal, like, up there.
Go ahead.
Well, the right side of the
the
line.
wrong era, Brian.
No kidding.
Hey,
you could have made a lot of
about made me cuss, Mickey.
48 millions in your time.
What's crazy, Hoppy, is I showed Mickey this before we got on the air. Jason at Over the Cap has the spending over the last decade and what salary cap has, as it's gone up. Right tackle, it's ridiculous. It's like 191% more than what it was 10 years ago. So the right side of the line is just, and I know that hurts your heart because you're the left side of the line guy. They're all your guys, but you hold down the left side. But anyway, I'm just looking at things. I'm trying to look at availability, which is super important, as the injury woes that have gotten the team in the last 3-4 seasons, and just production and value and all of those things rolled into one. Plus that age, like at 25, 26, 27, you're going into your best years as a pro.
Yeah.
So what do you make of Diana Rossini has said something along those lines, and then Chad Forbes, who we've had on the show, and again, Rhett Bryan is sitting in with Brad Hopkins and me for this first segment. What do you make of two different people, Diana, who's notedly been connected to the Titans, and then Chad Forbes, who sometimes will just throw something huge out there, both saying, oh, no, the Titans are going to spend money. And Forbes essentially said they're going to spend like the Jags spent 2 years ago.
Well, I don't want exactly that, because that didn't work out completely. Like some of those, yes, Evan Ingram, Christian Kirk, and those guys, that worked out good. But the other parts where they overspent in some places and ended up having to cut those guys, no, not so much. I don't know exactly what that means, and I think we're speaking in pretty broad terms here. But, yeah, I mean, they've got money to spend. So I would anticipate a splash signing or two, and then mixed in with some very solid, because it's not just what is reported over this weekend and going into that legal tampering period. There's a second, a third wave, and even on into the summer, some things you can do. But I don't know who the names would be. I don't know if it's going to be something massive like one of the major stars, like if it's L'Jarius Sneed. I don't know that, but they have money to do this. They have been in cap jail for quite some time, and I don't think they're looking to get back there anytime soon, but they know they have many needs in many places that not just the draft is going to help.
When I was at the facility during training camp, I bumped into Amy.
Yeah.
And I told her, I said, I love what you've done with the place as far as all the changes that have taken place. And you know what I'm talking about, at the facility at 460 Great Circle Road, right?
The locker room went from looking like a county hospital room to a locker room in the NFL is what it's supposed to look like. Much different from what you had.
Her response was, I like to spend money. And she said that, I laughed, okay? So from what you know of the history of this organization, when her papa was running this compared to what she's potentially could be able to do now, especially with the salary cap situation that the Titans find themselves in, will she stand by that conversation in spending the money in those crucial positions that might need a little bit more change?
I do believe that to be the case, and I do believe that she would stand by that for one thing. You've talked to Miss Amy enough. She wants to win. And what do you have to win? You got to have the right weapons. You got to have have to have the best 53 you can get your hands on. So how do you do that in this time of the year? Spend a little bit. So, or maybe a lot, depending on how you view it.
You also went to the Combine, and you got to spend some time up there. You got to interview guys, talk to guys. You did all kinds of stuff. You're with Coach Mack, which I've referred to the Combine as Coach Mack Family Reunion. While you were up at Coach Mack Family Reunion, what Combine crushes did you develop? Because you're like me. You go and you find these dudes, and you're like, oh, this is my guy. Tajay Spears was your guy last year.
Well, and let's start right there, because I don't know if you saw the post, but there was a real estate agent in Dallas that posted that he had sold Derrick Henry a rather large house in Dallas, Texas recently, and maybe even closed as much as yesterday. And I've said for a while, I don't believe Derrick's coming back. I think he's a Baltimore Raven or he's a Cowboy. I've said that for a while. Just those are the places that make sense.
Yeah.
So there's going to be a changing of the guard there, but there will be someone else to help run the ball with Tajay, because it's, running back by committee is a common thing now. You were laughed at about that way back when. You guys had Eddie. You're like, you got 3 guys over here. We got one guy that takes care of all that. Sorry.
He was a one-man committee.
He was. And but I'm going to stay with the running backs, because here's the thing. There's not going to be a run on running backs until you get towards the middle of the second round of the draft. There'll be a run there, and then there's value throughout. And I'll give you an example. There's a running back from Louisville that had my attention just before I went, and then did he test off the charts. Isaac Garendo, 6 feet, 220 pounds, ran a 4.33 40. Had a, 39-inch vert, had a good broad, I think 10.9 broad jump. 3-cone drill was good. Showed explosion and all of those things that you like to see. That's just one example. One of my favorites is a guy that I met at the Senior Bowl, is Ray Davis, the running back who was at Vandy, went to Kentucky. Great guy. Unbelievable background as a kid. He was homeless in San Francisco as a kid. One of 12 or 15 kids. At the point he was in foster care with his 2 youngest siblings, a family member came forward and said, hey, we can take 2 of you. I only have space for 2, not all 3. And he said, take my younger siblings. I'll just figure it out. He was homeless for a good chunk of time. And he had a teacher that helped him out. He stayed at a teacher's house for a while. And so he's made his way the hard way through this. And he's an outstanding person. He tested well at this thing. But those are just a couple of, because I love the human interest stories in this. But Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback from Toledo, maybe a top 10 pick now.
Yeah.
He's mentioned in the very top tier of the corners in this thing with Terrion Arnold from Alabama and Nate Wiggins. He's going to be just the second Toledo guy to be drafted in the first round. It doesn't happen that often. MAC conference guys aren't selected that often in the first round, and he's going to be the latest in that. But tackles in this thing, Brad, you've started looking at these guys. I mean, it may be a historic tackle draft. One time in the last 50-plus years since they merged in AFL, NFL in 1970, and there was one draft in 2008 where there were 7 tackles taken in the first round. I think it'll flirt with that number. And the consensus seems to be Joe Alt, Notre Dame, Olu Fashanu, Penn State. And then there's maybe a sub-tier with a lot of the Talifuagas from Oregon State and Tyler Guyton from Oklahoma and J.C. Latham from Alabama and Amarius Mims from Georgia. There's a handful of guys there that I think all have a serious chance to be first-round draft picks. And then there's some interior offensive line. We may live in a world where we have 3 centers drafted in the first round.
My draft, we had 5 in the first top 20 picks.
Tackles, yeah.
Well, 3 tackles, then a center.
Yeah.
Steve Everett was drafted right after me at 14. Yeah. Lester Holmes was drafted at 18 to the Eagles. But before that, Willie Rofe was first, Lincoln Kennedy was second, I was third, and then we had a run on some linemen there. But the question I would have for you, Rhett, is how would you build your roster? Would you draft and develop, or would you rather plug and play? In other words, you're going to spend some more change with guys that have experience.
Yeah.
But then again, they might not be around as long because they may be longer in the tooth, or, they might get too expensive. But when you look at the scenarios that the Titans have to deal with this year, I guess maybe what positions would you plug and play versus develop?
Okay, so let's just stay with the tackle for a second, because Tyron Smith, the Dallas Cowboy, who is 33, 34, somebody asked me about him recently, and I was like,
did in the hallway.
Well, that was really recently, but somebody asked me.
What time is it?
Somebody asked me a couple of days ago the same thing, and I said, Tyron's great player, but I would have to pass. And it's availability is the thing. He's missed 38 games in the last 4 seasons. Got to have somebody there, especially on that left side.
Right.
That's why I would rather them draft a tackle and then plug and play with some of the interior parts of the line. I would draft a wide receiver, but I would also get a plug and play receiver in free agency because it's a very rich wide receiver draft. Look, if I put on my Rand Carthon hat and it's sitting at 7 and Joe Alt is there from Notre Dame, I'm pulling the trigger and going with Joe Alt. He's the most polished out of all of these cats. Olu Fashanu is fantastic. He's the more athletic of the two, but Joe Alt is plug him in next to Peter Skoronski and watch him go for the next decade. That's what I believe. If both of those guys are gone at 7 and the quarterback thing is in play, as it always is, and J.J. McCarthy's probably going to be the 4th quarterback taken in this draft after last week, especially with some of these other guys not testing. Depends on what happens between now and then, but if Atlanta hasn't done anything at 8, you're going to leapfrog them to go get whoever you want, and guess who's right before them? The Titans at 7. And these wide receivers, good gracious, wow. But you could take a receiver at pick 38 if you wanted, and also pick up a free agent. Like Gabriel Davis from the Buffalo Bills is somebody I really like as a free agent. He's 25 years old. I think he missed 3 games in 4 years, 27 touchdowns. I've seen what he can do. We've seen what he can do. In that playoff game that they lost in Kansas City, he had 4 touchdowns that night. He can make it happen. There's so many options in this. So it just depends on what their philosophies are.
Yeah. Hanging out with Rhett Bryan here and Brad Hopkins sitting in for the Hitman. You surprised yet that no Titans have been cut? I just asked that because some people thought, oh, maybe they'll go ahead and cut Andre Dillard, or maybe they haven't cut anybody. A lot of teams have started to make cuts and some significant players that people know, but no cuts for the Titans.
I would put that at 50-50. I'm a little surprised, but not as much surprised because they're not in a position where they have to do that. You know, they've got top 2 or 3 money available to spend. So I don't know, and I don't think it's any great difference if they were to do that with Andre Dillard post June 1st designation, because there's going to be some dead cap money involved. But they have the luxury this time around, other than the last 3 or 4, where they can sit pat and do what they need to do and figure that part out. But I don't know who else would be on that cut list. But yeah, I would anticipate there's going to be roster turnover. There always is. So,
last thing for me, Red. I'm not sold 1,000% that we've seen the last of Derrick Henry, just because I don't want that to be the case.
I don't either.
Okay.
No,
so,
I'm not ready to send him down the river.
But we all admit that there needs to be sort of a 1 and 2, a thunder and lightning, a something else, because Tajay probably is not your 1 through 4 back. I say 4 just because you don't know what could happen in short yardage situations, and we know the role that Derrick played. Are you then in the market for the plug-and-play type guy that could replace Derrick Henry, or are you looking in the draft to get somebody else to kind of back up Tajay?
You could do either, just because there's not going to be a run on running backs early on in the draft. There's not a Bijan Robinson this year. There's not going to be one taken in the first round. So you have options there. But you look at this free agent market, and that's what's going to be one of the more compelling things about free agency next week is what is the number? Because look at it. I mean, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler. I like Tony Pollard. You could get a Tony Pollard who probably fits a little more of what you're wanting to do, because it's no fault of Derrick's at all. But Derrick was not asked to catch out of the backfield coming up through this thing, and he worked at it every offseason like a madman and got better at it. But you need a guy you need a couple of guys that are 3 down backs. It's that simple. That's where this thing has gone. I don't want Derek to go either. I want him to finish here. I want to see him get 10,000 yards. I want to see him retire as a Titan, but I just don't think that's going to happen.
I don't want him to break Eddie's record for personal reasons.
Sure, I get it.
I'm just saying.
I get it.
I listened to you, Blaine, you, Mickey, and Blaine yesterday, and Blaine made a very eloquent case about the fact that Derrick Henry's style of running might not fit what Brian Callahan has in mind for this offense. So,
and that's why I say what I say is because I just think there's a changing of the guard there because the long-time Titans, even back to the Oilers, 3 yards in the cloud of dust thing, it's run game's still going to be there. It's just not going to be like it was.
Gotcha.
Rhett, we know you got appointments, man. We thank you for starting the show with us.
Glad to do it.
You start your weekend. Well, I mean, you probably got work to do, but
I got a couple things. But yeah, it's Friday afternoon.
Then go ahead and start your weekend.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Have a good one, y'all.
The one and only Rhett Bryan. We're going to talk some more old linemen. We got a top shelf left tackle in here with us today, so we're going to talk left tackles with Brad Hopkins. You want to join the discussion? Phone lines are wide open, 615-737-1045. Would love to hear from you. You got questions? You got comments? Blaine and Mickey open for business. Blaine and Mickey powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors.
And now, an update from the Blue Cross Basketball State Championships in Murfreesboro, presented by the Tennessee Highway Safety Office.
It is halftime at the Murphy Center. Girls 1A action in Murfreesboro. Good afternoon. I'm Lucas Panzica. Greenfield leads Moore County 20-16 in the 1A girls semifinal. The winner will move on and face either Pickett County or Wayne County. They will tip off at 2:15 in Murfreesboro. Drunk driving is the ultimate form of unsportsmanlike conduct. Fans don't let fans drive drunk. Brought to you by the Tennessee Highway Safety Office, a division of the Tennessee Department of Safety and Homeland Security.
Blaine and Mickey 104.5 The Zone, hanging out with Brad Hopkins. So let's just get into it today.
Yeah.
Alt versus Fashanu. There's a good chance they could both be there at 7. Let's just say they are. We're going to do hypothetical purposes today. I know this is something you've looked into.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, Brad. I kind of outed myself. I was asking Rhett about Tyron Smith, but I said, how many of all of these tackles that people are just so excited about are even left tackles? Like Talise Fuaga or some of these guys, if you read their bio, it's like, expects to shift to the right, is really a right tackle. Might be I'm not using him as an example, but I am kind of using him as an example. He's been a right tackle. So a bunch of these guys are right tackles, and that's obviously also a very valuable position, but it's not left tackle. The two consensus guys that everybody continues to talk about, and they're not a guard like Skoronski, or they're not a right tackle like some of these other dudes, Alt and Fashanu. These are the two left tackles in the draft, the two big-ticket guys. Curious to get your thoughts on them. And for people, if maybe you're one of the 116 people who just moved here yesterday, Brad Hopkins was the starting left tackle for the Titans. For 12 of 13 years, you started at right on. Is this right? No, you took over your first year for a guy at left tackle, right?
Yep.
Okay, I remember.
Yep.
Just took me a second to process through it. So essentially a 13-year starter at left tackle, made Pro Bowls, did all that stuff, set the standard for playing left tackle for this organization when it moved here. And then they got Michael Roos, and he kept that thing going. And when Lawan was healthy, Lawan kept the thing going. And then it's just been a rudderless boat over there, since Lawan got hurt. So it feels like maybe they've got a chance to find their next U. But I'm curious what you think about these potential U's who they might draft.
So I'm going to read you my notes.
Okay.
I took these notes on Joe Alt, and I took these notes on Olu Fashanu. So Joe, when I looked at his tape, I saw an extremely smooth technician. Tremendous size, of course, 6'8". His wingspan is ridiculous. So those long arms are a definite benefit for him, right? I also loved his hip movement. It makes it very hard for edge rushers to get around a guy that's got great hips. When you say great hips compared to feet, that means you're athletic.
Right.
Okay? And he has that. He has tremendous pass sets. Now, what I didn't see was him blowing guys off the line of scrimmage when it comes to run blocking. Maybe, sometimes guys get leverage on you because you are so tall. Mm-hmm. But he does do well in zone blocking schemes. In other words, he's going to get a great fit with his guard, sometimes even the tight end, to then move up to the next level to be able to get to the linebacker level and take care of those would-be tacklers, because that's what the job of the front four is to do, is to keep their keep those avenues open for those linebackers to come screaming through the hole and make those great tackles. That's why they get most of the big bucks. But when I looked at Olu's tape, I saw Olu not near as technically sound. There's going to be some situations that he's going to need to address. He turns his shoulders a lot, okay? He bends over backwards a lot. In other words, guys that are shorter, and I say shorter, he's 6'6". Not
I was
short,
that short. Yeah.
right. But what happens is when people come downhill to try and challenge you in a bull rush, are you going to be able to anchor? Mm-hmm. And he was able to hold his own in the college level. At the pro level, man, that might be more of an issue. Because they're looking at the tape and they're seeing exactly how they can exploit your weaknesses. And if that is one way that they feel that they can get at you, other than getting you to turn your shoulders and giving them a two-way go. What I mean by turning your shoulders is when you think of the line of scrimmage, okay, just consider it being a straight line that goes from sideline to sideline. The more parallel that your shoulders are with that line of scrimmage, that's to your advantage, because the defensive end does not have a soft shoulder to go through if he's rushing up the field wide. In other words, you haven't turned your shoulders giving way to the quarterback. Your shoulders are pretty stout and pretty square. Same thing can be said about a guy that then decides to come down the line of scrimmage on an inside penetration. Your shoulders are already square, so you don't have to try and turn your hips and then readjust. You just ride them down into the guard, right? Or even past the guard center box and into the trash, and then you basically are you're well equipped to keep the integrity of the pocket. That's something that I saw was more of a challenge for Olu, and I know if I'm sitting there thinking it, defensive ends are going to be thinking it as well too, because all they got to do is sit around and watch tape, right? So when I compared the two, I just saw a guy here that I'm not going to say he's generationally gifted, but he's generationally gifted because the guy played tight end, okay? He knew he was going to play tackle because his body just kept growing and kept growing and kept growing. and, in counsel with his father, who also was a tight end, switched to tackle, and the fact that you're speaking to a tight end switched to tackle, because I got my scholarship to Illinois as a tight end, and I just ate my way to tackle. I love telling that story. But the point is, this guy has athleticism in his DNA and in his background. So I would assume that this guy that, has great feet, good hips, great long arm length, the size, it means everything in the NFL, especially up front. So I want him to play stronger, which he will, and I also want him to continue working with Bill Callahan to make sure he's in the proper position. So if I'm comparing the two, it's not apples and oranges. It's almost like a Washington red apple and a green apple.
Different kinds of apples. Yeah.
Different kinds of apples, but they're both apples. So I would assume if someone doesn't make a run on Alt before we get to Joe at number 7, which I'm not assuming there will be, because as a matter of fact, let me get on my draft board. I have the Giants, who are before the Titans, taking Jerzon Newton from Illinois.
Oh,
yeah, I got him. And at number 5, I've got the Chargers taking Kool-Aid McKinstry, despite the Jones fracture that he's dealing with. I'm sure that that's something that he can probably get right before camp starts. So I think that he's probably the best, at least not one of the best cornerbacks on the draft board. And the Chargers will be looking to get a cornerback or a running back. Obviously, looking at the pieces that they have lost since. So, and Jim Harbaugh's looking to add to any kind of weaponry he can to Justin and make sure that he's good to go. That's probably one of the reasons why he even decided to take the job, because he loves Justin Herbert so much. But when you're looking at the availability of tackles in the draft, and that being the most subsequent thing that we need to address first and foremost, get yourself a guy that he, along with Peter Skoronski, kind of playing their college ball within 100 miles of each other. South Bend ain't that far from Northwestern.
Right.
So they kind of speak the same language of sorts. And I think that these two can have a nice congenial relationship and learn from one another and be the left side of this offensive line for the next, 10, 11, 12 years.
Brad Hopkins, again, hanging out for Blaine. There's always talk about different prospects, and for Fashanu and Alt, which I heard an interview with Fashanu, and he said, it's Fashanu, so I thought I had to remember that. I want to say Fashanu, but he said Fashanu. Then he said his first name, and I thought, I'm just going to call him Olu, because he said the whole thing, and there's some twists and turns in there I don't feel comfortable with. But all of these, draft guys who tell you everything about the draft, it's like Alt is more ready today. But Fashanu is probably more athletic and has more upside. Like in years, he may be better. So my question for you would be, again, as a guy who played the position as well as anybody could play it for over a freaking decade for this team, where do you fall on maybe this guy's at his ceiling, but he's already there, and maybe this guy's not where he is, but his ceiling could be higher? Where do you kind of fall on those type of evaluations?
That's a great question, but how high is that ceiling for a guy that's tickling the ceiling? Is it a 12-foot ceiling already? You see what I'm saying?
Well, if it is, Javon could touch it. Yeah.
Right. Well, no doubt about that. We'll talk about the freak during the break, but the point is, if this guy's ceiling is so extraordinary,
right,
how much better do you actually need him to be versus a guy like, let's just say, Amarius Sims? You just mentioned him. The guy's got 8 snaps starts rather.
Right. Mims, yep.
Yeah. So Mims, I said Sims. Mims. Regardless, there's still some development for this player that people feel, if he's considered one of the top 10 tackles with as little sample sizes as we've seen, Mickey, good guy. The guy must have the potential to be pretty good.
Oh.
Okay? And I'm going to tell you this. I didn't know what the run or the shoot was in the run and shoot offense, but when I got drafted to a team that needed to replace Don Maggs, who then went to Denver as a free agent, I was learning on the fly. I was just blessed enough to play my first year as a rookie next to Mike Munchak. And then when Mike Munchak decided to hang up the cleats, guess who I got for the next 10 years? Number 74, Bruce Matthews. So I was lucky enough to learn the game and the nuances, the minutia about the position from 2 guys that were playing it alongside of me. There was a lot more development that needed to be had in me because, like I just said, I came to college as a tight end. Blocking just became something natural to me because I played the game as if I was keeping you out of the paint. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So I was playing basketball with these guys out there, and I was quick enough to be able to do it.
You
had
the
that
feet
fashion.
to do it.
Yes. But did I know anything about offensive line play, hand placement, pad level, You know what I mean? That kind of stuff, getting your face up to see what you're hitting. You know, being explosive off the line of scrimmage and really kind of initiating that contact and taking a guy where you want him to go. That was something I had to learn later on, even as a professional. Mm-hmm. So I can see what you're saying as far as developing those younger players that do have that tremendous upside. But when you've already got a guy that's, you know, that checks off most of the boxes, which in my opinion, Joe does, okay, is there going to be some things for him to learn? Of course. Mm-hmm. He's not going to step in there like a Tony Baselli and all of a sudden get to the Pro Bowl in his first year. I mean, he could, depending on how this offense performs. Mm-hmm. But I just see him being a better fit just because of his athleticism, his size, which is tremendous, and how Bryan might even use him because pass setting is more of his asset, if you will. And I would assume that you're going to see less, like Rhett was saying, 3 yards in a cloud of dust with Brian Callahan's offense moving forward.
And it's funny because we were discussing this just a little bit, maybe even with Buck and Lucas before they left. I don't remember. It wasn't on the air, but people are like, oh, they've got Callahan now. They're just going to throw it all over the yard. Not necessarily. He said, we're going to do what it takes to win the game. If it's throw more, if it's run more. I look at this almost as just when they throw, maybe they'll throw smarter. And maybe they'll use the running backs differently other than I'm going to take the ball and I'm going to hand it to Derrick Henry while all of you are here to tackle him. Some short passes. Like if you watch the Bengals running backs, they don't just hand them the ball. They're more creative in the ways. They give guys more chances to make plays. Maybe that's what this offense can do. Because they just turned and handed it to the running backs. There hasn't been a lot of creativity. So maybe they'll catch more passes. And, you know, we kind of heard that, Tajay Spears, we can use him a million different ways. Well, then they really didn't.
Yeah.
I mean, they weren't super creative with that.
Well, I'll put it this way. As a boxer, if I've got a tremendous jab and I keep connecting with that jab and you can't do anything, well, I don't need to come with the overhand all that often because I'm just peppering you with this jab. You know what I mean? I don't need to expose myself with opening up and hitting yourself with a big punch and so you can knock me out. And that's what a run game does for you. If I've got a front five, and throw tight end in there too, a front six that's controlling the line of scrimmage, and I'm getting manageable down and distances. See, that's what this game is about. It's about down and distance. 3rd and 10 is a no-no.
Boy, they've had a lot of no-nos
deal,
for the last couple of years.
So what helps you on 3rd down? The first two. Mm-hmm. So if I'm getting gains in the first 2 yards, in the first 2 attempts, right, then that means that the playbook is more expansive to me on that 3rd down situation because now you don't know if I'm passing it, if I'm running it, if I'm play actioning it. You don't know what I'm doing with it because I have a number of things that I can do with this manageable down and distance. So for me, I play Madden all the time. I'm sure you do too, right? As an offensive coordinator, my X's very rarely see the ball unless I'm in those type situations. My slot receiver, my tight ends, my running back even coming out of the backfield, those are more of my pass receivers. Plus, the run game is always established. I like to run some toss sweeps every now and then, but for the most part, I love to run between the tackles. If I've got a set where I've got just a typical 4-3 front, 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers, meaning that there's probably edge rushers that are outside the tackles. You probably got a tilted or shaded 3 technique over the guards, meaning there's gaps between each one of those guys. I'm figuring out where I'm going to sneak my running back in to not hit the home run, Mickey, but to get gains of like 4, 5, 6 yards. 2nd down, I'm doing the same thing. So if I'm looking at 3rd and 1, I've got everything in my playbook open to me to be able to do. And you've got to be able to defend all of that. You see? So that's the way I would assume, like you were just talking about, Brian Callahan would want to run an offense being less predictable. No offensive coordinator wants to be guessed what they do, and then all of a sudden the defensive coordinator is guessing right every single time.
Right.
They don't want that.
I'll tell you what we do want is another segment with Brad Hopkins. Before this hour ends, we'll do that. There is a position on the offensive line where there's a free agent. You could probably bring this particular guy back for a moderate amount, but there are also some free agents available at this position with some experience. Let's talk about centers next, right here on Blaine and Mickey with Brad Hopkins.
Below MSRP? Below MSRP. Below MSRP. It's pretty simple. Two Rivers Ford sells all new non-specialty Fords below MSRP.
Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone, hanging out with Brad Hopkins, giving it to you, baby, on a Friday afternoon. Duck Falling says in the F&M Bank chat on Blaine and Mickey, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors, Mickey, I cannot watch another season with a fullback masquerading as the center. Move on from Aaron Brewer, ASAPLY, as soon as possible. He is a fullback masquerading as a center. This is the words of Duck Falling, who has a picture of Buck Rising in his avatar. Everybody down there loves the guy. Mike Vrabel always talked about these, tougher than a $2 steak or whatever he said. Everybody loves the guy. He's fun to talk to. He's an unbelievable story. He was a well-rounded lineman, did everything at Texas State, the former Southwest Texas State. I'm a Sun Belt guy with Arkansas State, so I always know the Sun Belt guys, and really impressive guy. And in that league, you can be an undersized offensive lineman, and you can be just fine. You can be an undersized anything and be fine in that league. That's the way that league is. It's the home of the 235-pound defensive end. So he's a free agent. If he leaves, you need a center. There are some centers out there who have a lot of experience. People are talking about Cushenberry and Andre James, and top tier in the chat says Lloyd Cushenberry or Andre James at center. There are centers available, Brad. There are some guys with good careers so far who've been cut loose. We were discussing this a little bit before the show. When you look at Brewer, again, your 13-year offensive lineman, do you see a guy and you think, gosh, maybe he'd be a better guard? Could I feed him 7,000 calories a day and see how that went? Try to put some more sand in his butt, as Coach Mack might say, or sand in his britches. But what are you going to do there?
So I had the fortune of coaching Aaron Brewer in the combine development here in Nashville. He spent his time here in Nashville getting ready for his trip to Indianapolis. Mm-hmm. I saw an extremely smart guy, an extremely strong guy, mm-hmm. Ironically saying. Now, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, size is everything when you're talking about up front, because it doesn't do me any good if I'm 260 pounds and all of a sudden I've got a 320-pound nose tackle sitting right over me.
Right.
Because that's a lot to deal with for anybody. Especially
physics win in that case.
Now, I will say that some schematics can help that. Mm-hmm. Slide protection could have been a benefit to them. Instead of having Aaron in a one-on-one situation where he's overmatched physically because the guy across from him is just bigger than him, what if he's just protecting the gap to his left or the gap to his right, knowing that the opposite guard from the slide is actually coming with him to help him double team everybody? In other words, everybody's got a double team except for the tackle that's opposite the slide. In our system, if you called 61, that meant we were sliding to the left. We were sliding to the outside. So that meant that John Runyon was by himself. If we called 62, we were sliding to the right. That meant I was by myself. But what that meant for the other four guys is that you can set up your pass blocking scheme in accordance to knowing that there's somebody protecting your back. You see what I'm saying? Now, for Aaron, I wouldn't get Aaron mixed up into the positional conversation. Just because he played center this year doesn't mean that that's all he can do. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that he might
played guard here before.
Exactly. Yeah. He could challenge Daniel Brunskill for that guard spot. You know what I mean? So even though he's a free agent, maybe you get guys that are serviceable, guys that are interchangeable to still be a part of a system. And I say system loosely because obviously we know everything's different this year. So who knows what they'll be requiring those offensive linemen to do. But you're going to keep your core, your nucleus. And Bill Callahan coached me. So I know. Okay. Yeah. So I know still what he has left as far as he's not going to reinvent the wheel. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? So I think that some of the things that he taught me, he can still teach some of these developing linemen like Aaron Brewer to be in the right position. So it doesn't necessarily have him with the ball in his hand, snapping it to the quarterback where he could be most effective. You could still keep him on the roster and have him be a depth piece, if not challenge a starter like a Daniel Brunskill for one of those spots. Now, does that mean you need to do something at center? Probably. And like Rhett was saying, I might want to spend a little bit of change getting somebody that's affordable. Affordable meaning, Joe Alt will be a draft pick. He's not going to make any more than the 7th pick of the draft, any more than the 6th pick of the draft. He's not going to make less than the 8th pick of the draft. Right? He's slotted to wherever those positions are going to pay at that time. So it's not, and you've also going to have him for 4 years at that cost. So it's not like you're paying him the premium for a left tackle because he's a rookie. That's why they have a rookie salary cap in place. What that does mean is that you can have maybe the left side answered because of your first-round pick last year and your first-round pick this year, and then spend a little bit of change somewhere on the interior. Interior meaning could be center as well.
Mm-hmm.
As guard on that right side. So are we talking about replacing a right guard, or even then, I don't know how you feel about Chris Hubbard.
Didn't see a whole lot of him. He was injured.
Dylan Radins.
Yeah.
Right? So there could be a conversation at the right tackle spot.
Radins might be the wildest of wild cards on the team, Brad, because we don't know anything about him in this system or with Bill Callahan or Brian Callahan or any Callahan that might also be there.
Yeah, I would look at maybe spending some little bit of money at guard and tackle this year because obviously the third-round pick, they say, is the most important pick of the draft. First-round picks are no-brainers. And these guys have put on enough tape for you to qualify them as first-rounders. They're doing stuff that's unique. Second-rounders, it might be a guy that you thought might go day 2, but probably is going to go day 2, or day 1, but then goes day 2. But he's still a really good pick. That third pick, you just don't know what you're going to get there. You know what I mean? That third pick could be a guy that ends up being a third pick of the draft, but performs like a starter, like a first-round pick. And after that, it's just kind of like, rolling the dice. You really don't know what you're going to get. Sometimes you might get a seventh-rounder like Tom Brady that turns out to be a Hall of Famer, and sometimes you might get a seventh-rounder you never even hear from again after training camp.
Look at the guards that you played with during your tenure here. A lot of those were after Bruce and Munch were gone. Mid-round guys.
Yep.
The center, Kevin Long, that you played with. I mean, your line had late-round draft picks on it. They played their role great. Yes. Yeah. They played their role great. All right, we continue this discussion and more. Hour number 2 coming up. The Titans are bringing back one of their own free agents. There are others, if you heard Rhett Bryan off the top of the show, that might still be in play. We need to get into some of that next. We got lots to get to. Hour number 2 on a Friday, Brad. Hopkins hanging out for the Hitman. You can join the discussion, 615-737-1045, or you can jump in the F&M Bank chat at any time.
Good afternoon. It is Joseph Bonanno. It is 2:01. The Tennessee Titans agreed to terms on a one-year deal with long snapper Morgan Cox, keeping the five-time Pro Bowler in Nashville. The NFL Players Association has announced that former Vol and current Lions linebacker and Pro Bowl special teamer Jalen Reeves-Maybin has been elected as the president by the Board of Player Representation. This weekend, Nashville jumps back into MLS regular season play on Sunday, hosting LA Galaxy for a 2 p.m. kick. Pre-game coverage right here on The Zone starts at 1:30. The Predators, their point streak is at 10 games after a 4-2 win over the Buffalo Sabres. Philip Forsberg had a hat trick in the 9th of his career. The Preds will hit the road starting with a game in St. Louis tomorrow at 11:30. In college basketball, let's start with the women's side. The Tennessee Lady Vols are currently facing off against Alabama in the SEC tournament quarterfinals. Currently, Tennessee leads 26-20 with just 6 minutes left in the first half. Rakia Jackson leads the Lady Vols with 8 points. Tennessee men's basketball wraps up the regular season at home against Kentucky on Saturday, celebrating senior day after clinching the SEC regular season title this week. Tip-off at 3 p.m. Vol Network coverage on The Zone starts at 2:30. Vanderbilt will wrap up the season at home against Florida for a 3:30 tip, and the Belmont Bruins face Northern Iowa this afternoon in the Missouri Valley Tournament quarterfinals, a 2:30 tip-off. For all your foundation repair and waterproofing needs, visit USSTN.com. Breaking news at once on your home for the Titans and Vols. This is 104.5 The Zone.
Hour number 2, locked and loaded. Blaine and Mickey. Brad Hopkins sitting in today for the Hitman, Blaine Bishop. By the way, I saw his wife had posted this. Happy anniversary to Mr. and Mrs. Hitman.
Oh, shut up.
Yes, I think she's at 25. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
that makes sense.
Crazy kids. So
Hey,
happy anniversary.
Stella, good job, girl.
If you see Blaine and Sella, tell them happy. I almost said happy birthday. You can tell them that too, but it's not their birthdays. Happy anniversary to them. It's an anniversary for Morgan Cox because he has been re-signed to another NFL contract. Make it 15 for him. 15. The Titans' 5-time Pro Bowl long snapper set to return for his 15th season, his 4th with the Titans. I will just say this. That's one of those things where fans are like, oh, yeah, big deal. Hey, man.
Is that how they sound?
Yeah, some fans. Not all of them. Just, no, fans, I don't think you all sound like that. Come on, Brad. Help me out here. But when you, like a team will tweet that, we've re-signed our long snapper, and people are like, oh, don't break the bank or anything. Let me say this about this dude. The only time we ever say his name, ever, is that he re-signed another contract. If you ever say your long snapper's name other than that, that means bad things have happened. We only say his name other than like, I saw Morgan Cox at practice. He's a nice dude, or he just signed another contract.
Also, it's nice to have more than just one special teamer under contract for 2024.
That's
There's
true.
that. But don't discount teams either, though, because that's the field position
Oh,
game.
you kidding me? I'd love that dude. Bring
like
it on.
Like you just mentioned, if stuff starts breaking down, like when we lose our punter, or all of a sudden snaps are getting slung over the guy's head, or they're not on target, or it messes up the timing of an extra point or a field goal. Now we're starting to have these conversations. The fact that we don't have these conversations, with consistency, that's a good thing. So, keep what you got that works and don't mess with it.
100% on board for Morgan Cox. They still got to figure out kicker because Nick Folk is a free agent. He was, 39 last year?
Yeah.
And everywhere the ball was supposed to go, with the exception of a couple extra points, one that Tannehill held that would have come in really handy, he pretty much hit everything else. He kicked off great. Did they re-sign him? Did they bring in some young guy? They had 2 young guys battling before they were both jettisoned, and then they signed Nick Folk. So that's yet to be revealed to all of us. But if you look at the rest of the Titans, Derrick Henry was a guy that Rhett Bryan joined us off the top of the show. By the way, if you missed anything or you just want to hear something again, remember Blaine and Mickey podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, we'll get you there. All your favorite Zone shows are there waiting on you. And Derrick Henry continues to come up, and he continues to come up with Titans fans. And Jimmy Wyatt, I read the mailbag every week, and probably 3 of the questions are about, you think we'll bring Derrick back? Is there a chance we'll bring Derrick back? We all saw Derrick say goodbye, and then on the field. Then he came in the locker room and he said a bunch of goodbyes. Rhett said that there's a real estate agent on social media who's like, yep, just sold a house to Derrick Henry right here in the Dallas area. Well, he trains there. Sometimes with NFL guys, Brad, they buy a property or a house here or there. Like, how many people live here? NFL guys who play on other teams.
Absolutely.
So I try not to completely overreact to that, but Dallas is a team maybe where Derrick has been linked and, maybe a type of running back they would covet who would be a guy who could just come in and run, be durable like he's been. The Ravens are a team that some people have tried to project Derrick to. So I don't know. That's going to be something that Derrick has to figure out because he gets to test free agency. He gets to see what kind of money's out there and where the interest is.
I think it comes down to more than just cash for Derrick Henry because Derrick Henry is going to bring X amount of dollars. Mm-hmm. You're not going to see a huge discrepancy between any team that's actually bidding for his services, right? Right. In other words, you're not going to see one guy bid 18 and another guy bid 12. It's just not going to be the case. Someone's going to be on par. So what are the little intangibles about these offers that would make it different? Mm-hmm. If we're gauged on chips versus the money that you've made, because no one's going to remember how much money you made during a year or how much you made during your career, unless you're on Google or something like that. But they will remember, did he have a chance to play for a ring? Mm-hmm. Did he actually, how many conference championships did he actually go to? That kind of thing. So if you're looking at teams that give you the path of least resistance, going with last year's MVP might be more of the consideration, especially when you don't see an entire workload of the run game being on his shoulders with a guy of Lamar Jackson's capabilities, right? Mm-hmm. So that might be a situation, especially with the defense also that they have in place. Just if you want to be under the microscope, if you want to be under the pressure that comes along with being on Jerry Jones's team, go down to Dallas. Because if you're Dak Prescott, you can win 12 games and then still talk ish about you.
They got to figure out his deal, too.
You see what I'm saying? Yeah, and there's guys that still need to be signed. So, I just think that when you're looking at the possibility of cementing who you were, your legacy of sorts, you can't discount the place that you started it from, the place that, you were allowed to make your name, basically. Mm-hmm. So I know that we count Derrick Henry as being on down the road and he's buying property here and buying property there. I mean, shoot, what if he just wants to be a realtor of sorts and just trying to take advantage of the Airbnb market or something? Those could be part of the scenario too, him buying property. Mm-hmm. But I'd also look at, like the guys in front of me. Who's going to make it harder for me to do my job? Mm-hmm. If they haven't made staunch improvements here in Nashville, then it's not even a thought.
Right.
Because I'm not going to continue to run myself into the back of this wall and get people tackling me 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage because no one is able to keep the integrity of the pocket up front. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go to a place where they're getting push, where I can be the guy of old, where I have those 3 steps to be able to get. Remember how we listened to John Harbaugh talk about, how you get Derrick Henry down? You get to him before you get to that 3rd step. Mm-hmm. Well, if I'm dealing with an offensive line that's getting push and I'm all of a sudden past the line of scrimmage and I'm into the linebacker level, that's where Derrick Henry is most effective. I take that in consideration. The team that actually gives me the most chance to win a championship and the one that makes it easier for me to do my job. The money, that's going to come along with who I am. I'm not going to make more or less than what this 30 market or 29-year-old or 30-year market's going to make for a running back.
Right.
If that still has a lot of juice, someone's not going to pay handsomely more than anybody else because they've got to have Derrick Henry because if they would have already by now. So, and I'm just clarifying real quick, I was mentioning the dichotomy of 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and so on round picks. I recognize the fact that we don't have a 3rd round pick. I was just talking about basically how we don't have a 3rd round pick this year, and that's a pretty pivotal position to pick at. Given the fact that number one pretty much is already sold. We already know what these guys can do, and offensive line seems to be what we're going to do. Maybe cornerback. I'm even throwing in, you got to be able to apply pressure at some point. There's one thing about being able to take away your part of the field where a quarterback's even scared to look your direction for fear of turning the ball over. But I've also got to have somebody that's wreaking havoc on that front 5 that we just talked about and collapsing the integrity of the pocket or at least coming off the edge and making sure that this guy doesn't have 4 or 5 seconds to throw back there.
No, I think they absolutely need another edge guy who can soak up some time. If you look at Arden Key, who has another year under contract, his best year was in San Francisco was when he played the least. Yeah. He was at his best when he played the least. So obviously you're looking at a guy who plays in pass rush situations. Now Harold came on with his ACL repair like nobody's business. That was amazing to watch as the season went on. But absolutely, they need another outside guy to rush the passer. Speaking of pass rush, because you just segued right into this like a pro, Danico Autry is a free agent for this team. He just had his best year ever. And his average here was like 8.5 sacks, I think was his average in his time here. Then he goes out and gets double-digit sacks last year. He's on the other side at 30. You know, it's funny. He was a guy we always thought, okay, maybe he'll just practice a little less. You know, they'll have him on a plan. He practiced. He played. I mean, he just kept on trucking last year. It was just a phenomenal thing to watch. And Vrabel was good about vets, giving them, you know, time off their feet and that kind of thing. But, you know, Danico practiced just about every day in training camp even. He just kept on trucking. So he's a guy I think you would have to give some serious consideration to bringing back. Just you have money to spend. There's reports you're going to spend tons of money. I know you're always trying to guess like where the fall off is.
Yeah.
So you don't want to extend your bet beyond, you know, the fall off. And they've guessed it with some guys in the past. But the Danico Autry question, and Azeez Al-Shire, he's the other one, because of how productive he was. And if he leaves, you've probably got at least 2 linebackers you need to bring in to play significant minutes for you.
Yeah. It makes no sense to look other than, obviously, with those first couple of picks, O-line, and obviously addressing the secondary between Sean Murphy-Bunting, Christian Fulton, Kayvon Wallace. All those guys are gone. Even Terrell Edmonds, as far as the guy that comes in.
He's
off
free
the
agent,
right.
too.
They're all free agents. So you got to do something to getting some veterans in that back end, right? Hey, Kevin Byard got released. Anyway, but looking at the ability to apply pressure, I would come here for the one simple reason that I get to play alongside of Big Jeff.
Mm-hmm.
Big Jeff is going to require a lot of attention, which then frees things up for me. Because if I'm coming off the edge with some ferocity and guys decide to go ahead and double team me, then guess what? Big Jeff eats.
He's got the shortest trip to the quarterback too.
So then guess what? Now I've got guards and tackles that are trying to keep him at bay, which occupies one less blocker for me to be able to get to the edge. So if I'm looking at, you know, places I could come to, if you've got some menacing interior defensive linemen like the Titans do, man, that might be a spot for me to come to and spend some time.
Well, we can discuss that. Okay, we told you this yesterday. Some audio from Diana Rossini. I would like to play it again, Joseph, on the other side. It talks about the Titans wanting to spend some money. Well, Chad Forbes, who we've had on this program, went even deeper into that yesterday on Twitter. Want to read you a tweet or two from him. If you wonder about the Titans and where they are maybe as far as taking out Miss Amy's checkbook, there are a couple of people saying that the checkbook will be out and that the pen will be ready to write some big numbers. We'll get into that next with Brad Hopkins here on Blaine and Mickey on a Friday. Blaine and Mickey, powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors.
For many of you who have lived here a long time, you already know Eurofix has been in Middle Tennessee area for your European car repair needs now for 24 years. We've all gotten to watch them grow. And I don't know about you, but I love watching a hometown business take off. Well, we're now proud to announce the 5th location in Mount Juliet for Eurofix on Mount Juliet Road, right across the street from Dairy Queen. And Eurofix can serve you in Franklin, Hundred Oaks, Murfreesboro, Belmead, and now Mount Juliet. Pretty cool getting to watch a small-town mechanic starting in the barn in his backyard of a single-wide trailer and now grow to 5 locations repairing thousands of cars each month. And at Eurofix, you get a 3-year nationwide warranty and a free loaner car with every repair appointment. And all you have to do is just give them a call at 844-EUROFIX. That's right, 844-EUROFIX, or you can just visit them online at myEurofix.com. That's myEurofix.com. But always tell them Blaine to you.
Blaine and Mickey, 104.5 The Zone. Lady Vols in Alabama. At halftime, is that right, Bananas?
That looks to be about right. I think
42 to 29.
Yep, there you go.
42 to 29.
Putting the smackdown.
They're wearing the Pat Summit Blues, which B-Hop immediately gravitated towards those. These are some fantastic. I know you're the big orange. I get it. I do like these uniforms a lot, and they have orange on them.
I like the off-color stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We obviously know that they're orange and blue, or excuse me, orange and white. But when they come out with some, what is that? That's almost Oiler blue. You know, I guess you could look at it that way, but it is Summit blue in this case. We get it, but the colors are very similar. And the fact that they're playing as well as they are right now, given the fact that we were talking so much, up and down stuff about the Lady Vols this year, them maybe squeaking their way into a tourney, or would you say they were, Bananas?
Right now, I think it's looking like they're going to be around an 8 seed.
That's just not normal when you talk about the Lady Vols program. Yeah.
There's a standard there.
Yeah.
And they're not at the standard. They got to figure out what gets them at the standard. I mean, you were the standard for women's college basketball for how long?
It's because they haven't met the standard, the reason why we don't see them with as many talented players, or they're having to fight for those ones that normally would just be a no-brainer that they would get.
Well, think about this, guys. I mean, there are young ladies who are playing basketball at the highest level now who you could say, who is Pat Summit? And they might say, I don't know. I don't know. Or maybe they would go, oh, yeah, that's the lady that used to coach at Tennessee. I heard she was really great. But they never saw Pat coach. They're not old enough to even remember that version of the Lady Vols. It's like when we talk about a famous guy will become, like Deion becomes a famous, college football coach. And people are like, oh, it's recruiting. Well, those kids don't know who. I mean, they know who Deion Sanders is, but they never saw him play. But their parents are like, oh, my gosh.
I don't know, man. Deion does a good job of promoting himself.
But they just know him as like a really wild personality. They never got to see him play. They could go to YouTube, but it hits much harder with the parents. If you're Kelly Harper and you go and recruit a young lady now, they're like, oh, Kelly Jolly, oh, my gosh, Pat Summit. But the kid might be like, no, oh, coach, you played basketball?
Yeah. The conversation used to be programs giving these kids an opportunity to play at the next level.
Mm-hmm.
Now with NIL, the jump isn't near as desperate because these kids are making something in college. So they don't need to necessarily leave as underclassmen to then get rookie money someplace else, because that rookie money is being paid at the college level, right? So they can wait. Now that's the reason why you see even in men's sports, the 6-year guy, you know what I mean? So like the Bo Nix or the Michael Penix Jr. or something coming in as grad students or whatever, But when you look at programs that, that Pat Summit ran, you knew that not only was she going to put together a winning program and a team that's going to get, to the Final Four probably in essence, but you're then going to get the exposure that the women's league would definitely be attracted to.
Sure.
Yeah.
And then if you were a parent, Pat could literally go, I've never had anybody not graduate.
Yeah, there's that.
Oh.
There's that.
Right. But now it may take them saying, hey, man, go tilt this bank of NIL money, tilt some more towards women's basketball. So when we get a top recruit in, we throw a number at them maybe. You may have to overpay, like some teams do with free agents.
Yeah.
Maybe you have to overpay some.
And in this age of NIL, there's no reason that Tennessee and the Lady Vols, with that history and with that NIL funding that they have, should have 0 signees in a recruiting class. And that's what they had in 2023. No signees in a recruiting class. You can't have that.
You know what? I think that when you're a program that has been at the top for so long, at some point the discussion becomes, don't come here and be a part of the great players that we already have. Mm-hmm. Come be the great player.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You have now an opportunity to change the trajectory or the perception about this program, because we're buying into you as ushering in a new era for Vols basketball, or for Alabama football, or for even nowadays talking with what Jeff Heupel's been able to, what Josh has been able to put together, the football program that's got dudes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? You can be the next Peyton Manning. I throw that out there tongue in cheek, because obviously we know what Peyton Manning meant to the program.
Sure.
You see.
Well, it's like, hey, their time has passed. Come be the first you.
Come be the first you.
Be the person that makes this
Nico.
thing right. Be the person that makes this thing what it should be.
Yeah.
And just watch what happens after you do. You get everything that comes with it. Now we're talking about spending NIL money. Let's talk about spending some of the Titans' money. On the Athletic Football Podcast, this was yesterday. I was telling the boys, Brad, I was out walking around and can't run so much anymore. It's not conducive to.
Yeah, you're walking yourself.
What's going on with my body? I was out walking myself. And, man, I'm just listening to this podcast. Bananas, is there something going on?
You got the thumbs up. He's ready for you to run it if you want to run it.
Well, I don't know if this isn't necessarily breaking Titans news. Patriots are open to trading Mac Jones. Teams have been calling for him. Is this what you sent us?
That's what I sent you. But
Okay.
Oh, you know what? That's not a bad deal because do you want to get somebody in here that pushes Will Levis to the point where we're now starting to talk about it being legit? He could be the starter. Or do you want somebody that
like
just
when Tannehill got here with Mariota, and we all watched practice for about a week?
You're like, oh man, yeah. It's almost like when RG3 got drafted, and they also drafted Kirk Cousins. Like a couple of picks later, and you're like, oh, why would you do that? So maybe Mac Jones, having gone through all the issues that he's went through in New England, would come here and be a serviceable backup, not expected to start, but can still give you some really good reps when he's out there on the field.
Also, apparently the market for Justin Fields has not been up there, and if the market for Justin Fields is not high, I'm pretty sure you get Mac Jones on the cheap if that's the way you want to go to find your backup quarterback.
I might wait for them to cut him. I don't know if I would use any of my trade assets.
That's also a good
for Mac
point.
Jones.
Isn't Justin, though, a niche quarterback, though? In other words, he's not a guy that is your pure pocket passer, someone that's going to sit there and go through a progression. I think athleticism is one of the things that you buy into when you're looking at a Justin Fields. If that's the kind of guy you're looking for, you know what I mean? In other words, the people around him can make him the best quarterback that he can be, then, he'd be a good fit. Other than that, you've got to be pretty specific when you're looking to bring in Justin Fields, which is probably the reason why you don't see a bunch of suitors raising their hands.
Yeah. I might wait for Mac Jones to get cut. If I wanted Mac Jones, I'd just wait patiently by the phone.
So you say it's going to happen.
Well, for his agent to call. Hey, I mean, you're going to throw him out there. What's anybody going to offer you for Mac Jones? And that's no offense to Mac Jones, but he seems like a guy who might languish a bit there, and they may just say, okay, we'll just cut him because you're not going to have hardly any dead cap or anything. It doesn't hurt you at all to cut him at this point, and not too much anyway because you spent most of your right side up, I would say, in his rookie contract. All right, the Titans need people under contract. Diana Rossini on this podcast, I was walking myself yesterday. She was asked a question that got along the lines of who is ready to spend money. Bananas, do we have this? Let's re-rack it. Play it for Brad Hopkins.
I know you said that maybe some of those teams that had a lot of cash weren't necessarily the teams to watch next week, but I'm going to ask you anyway. Which of those teams that are flush with cap space, the Titans, the Patriots, the Texans, teams at the top, Washington, which of those teams do you think is going to be a little loose in the way that they throw money around when things get started?
I'll start with the Tennessee Titans. They're going to be spending in free agency. They have a lot of needs, and they know it. They're pretty open about it, where they have to improve and get better, right? They've moved on from a lot of different guys. Look, I know they're still in contact with Derrick Henry since we just mentioned him. I don't see that reunion happening. I see Derrick Henry moving on, but they're going to probably try to make an attempt there. But they have a lot where they need to improve. So the Titans are probably my number one in terms of just approaching this free agency with teams that have money that are going to go after it and chase it.
So that's what she said. Teams would have money that will go after it and chase it. She expects the Titans to spend money. Then yesterday evening, from Chad Forbes, who is at NFL Draft Bites on Twitter. Now, occasionally he will just drop some bombshell on Twitter. This is one of those guys who does that. Most of the time he stays in his lane. He's super opinionated. But he starts tweeting last night, the Titans will go on a spending spree. This is Chad Forbes. I'm going to hold up quotes because that's good radio. Titans will go on a spending spree the way the Jags did 2 years ago. Eye-popping contracts. Remember Christian Kirk, Zay Jones, Scherf, Fadakasi, Oluokun, Darius Williams, Rayshawn Jenkins, all to multi-million-dollar deals, and then even Evan Ingram. Because remember, all of our jaws were dropping. It was the combined value of, I went back and looked this up, the combined value of the Jaguars free agent contracts that year totaled roughly $268 million, including $156 million in guaranteed money. And that was even in a different world salary cap-wise, because we just saw the jump that it made, and it also made a jump after that year.
Yeah.
Where are you on just taking Amy's purse and just shaking everything out of it?
So the thing is, when you spend money, what you're getting in return, obviously you expect to make big dividends, right?
Mm-hmm.
But what if there's some exciting captures in that? You and Blaine were talking yesterday about Saquon Barkley coming to Nashville. And
Blaine was like, hey, man, if you're going to throw money at somebody.
Hey.
Yeah.
You're talking about people, all of a sudden, listen, if I'm sitting at Buffalo Wild Wings or whatever else, are they a sponsor? Are they doing anything on the show?
Yeah, they're good chicken. You can talk about them.
Anyway, the point being, if I'm out
Hattie
somewhere
B's,
enjoying some wings, Hattie B's or whatever, and all of a sudden I start thinking about, hey, the Titans just grabbed Saquon Barkley. I'm thinking, you know what? I might need to go out and get a ticket. Just in that intriguing situation that they're bringing in household names. And if you're talking about spending money, that's what you're doing. If you're spending money, that means that you're bringing in big ticket items that people are usually well versed on who and what they actually do. DeAndre Hopkins. You think about that. He comes in and people are like, oh, this is the next Julio Jones. No. This dude was on par. And had Ryan Tannehill just gone off script, he'd have got that kid an extra almost $1 million. You see what I'm saying? That's the kind of year he had.
Yep.
And he had it with Will Levis, right? So I would expect them to pick up where they left off. And maybe there was a bit of that, hey, you know who I am, right? Find me on the field kind of deal, because Will went to D-Hop sometimes probably when he shouldn't, and finding some other guys. But when you bring in more players of that ilk on the defensive side and the offensive side, now that does kind of say some things. When you're spending money like that, the Titans are pushing all them chips into the middle of the table. They're trying to win this dang division. Well, you almost have to, especially in a division that features such young quarterbacks. Between CJ, Trevor's still a young cat. Mr. Richardson up there in Indianapolis, Anthony, and of course our very own second rounder that is a first round grade. So I think you've got to get some star power, not only to get the fan base back or to want them to come out and feel comfortable about spending that money again, but to also give you a shot at winning the division.
What would your thoughts be? And I know this is probably not the direction the Titans are even thinking about or most fans are thinking about, but spending money, I know we've talked about maybe throwing money on the offensive side. What about the other side? And a guy maybe like Christian Wilkins, who plays defensive tackle, who he's going to require a lot of money. I saw somewhere where it could be the same level as Big Jeff's contract. I don't know how comfortable they are with throwing two big contracts like that in the same position. But a guy like that on the defensive line to pair up next to Big Jeff, and then that would kind of take some pressure off your edge rushers with Harold Landry and Arden Key, and then you invest all your free agent, or not all of your free agency, but a big chunk of your free agency money on your defense, and then that way in the draft
a tackle, draft a receiver,
you can focus on the offense.
Draft another receiver.
So you're saying draft on the offensive side, plug and play on the defensive side.
And I know that's kind of what they did last year. Actually, it's exactly what they did.
But they didn't draft any defensive people.
That's exactly what they did last year.
Exactly.
And
the offense was still terrible. They only took offensive people. Heaven help us.
And I don't think you can completely do that again this year, because you're just going to have to get some veteran guys on the offensive line, especially in the interior. But I would not be opposed if they took Christian Wilkins and they paired him next to Big Jeff and they said, go sack the quarterback. Because really, who's going to stop? Who are you going to guard between Big Jeff and
Well, if you're going to go Christian Wilkins, then why don't you just go Chris Jones? Why don't you just make the Chiefs go ahead and pay off the nose for a guy that obviously won a championship?
That's another guy.
Well, he tweeted like Chiefs and eyeballs emoji yesterday, and I wondered.
And he said this at the draft parade, or at their celebration parade. He wasn't going anywhere. But either way, you see what I'm saying.
Patrick Queen, a linebacker, is another.
Make him an offer he
like
can't
that.
refuse.
Chris Jones is a sophisticated cyborg who was sent back in time.
Emmanuel Ogbah, Leonard Williams. There's some names out there on the defensive edge rushing spot that probably could bring attention. Marcus Davenport. I liked Marcus Davenport when he was with New Orleans. I mean, new change of scenery could bring out something new. And I already mentioned playing alongside a Big Jeff and what that frees up for you as far as potential. I'm now in a one-on-one situation, which I know I can win.
Well, you brought this up too, B-Hop, earlier, and I don't even know if you remember it. They need two cornerbacks. Like you were talking about cornerbacks.
For sure.
They don't need one. They need a minimum of two.
I thought that might be the second pick, though.
It could be. It could be if they don't go tackle and receiver in some order.
Which do you think is more important? Let's just put offensive line on its own on the shelf. Receiver or cornerback, which are you taking with that second pick?
The crazy thing is, let me just qualify this a tiny bit. if you look in their receiver room, they have a guy who was a top 20 pick in Traylon Burks that we're not even talking about. Well, they need another receiver, and they need to draft one first overall. They still have DeAndre Hopkins, who, if he has a similar year to this year again, would you not bring him back again? Because as Blaine always says, his game isn't built on speed. It's built on being D-Hop. He D-Hopped himself all the way through last season. There's no reason to think he couldn't do it again. And last, a couple more years even, at least you have some people you think who can compete at receiver. You would just hope that if you just couldn't allocate enough resources or you allocated them in different places, that you could get enough out of Bergs. This may sound crazy. Kyle Phillips, who we watched kill it every year in training camp underneath. And then he just disappears and he's been injured. But just for the sheer need of bodies, cornerback is a bigger need. There just aren't bodies there.
That's a fact.
I mean, it's Roger McCreary just looking around like the Will Smith gif where he's just looking around the room, in Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, like, where did everybody go?
And I'm almost going to say,
or is that a meme?
Receiver and safety are more in line with one another because you have three receivers on the field most of the time in the offensive sets. So your X, Y, or whatever can make some stuff. But when you've got a guy that is tasked with taking away that best option on offense because he's in press coverage, or he's playing a cover 2 or something that is maybe a little off the line of scrimmage or something, that guy is supposed to neutralize Mike Evans. He's supposed to neutralize Devontae Adams. He's supposed to neutralize these top receivers. That's a job. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that they're more important than safeties or whatever, but I'm just saying when you're comparing receivers to the cornerback situation, I think you'd want to address cornerback before you'd want to address receiver.
Well, and the fact that the Titans don't have that third-round pick.
Right.
Because you could get a very in this draft, you could get a very decent wide receiver in that third round, probably even the fourth round. But you can't get a cornerback. You probably can't get one of those top cornerbacks past the second or even past the third. So if you had that third round pick, I would probably be more comfortable with taking wide receiver 2, and then you could go back and get DB or a cornerback in the 3. But then you're going to have to wait. Now, how they're situated, you're going to have to wait all the way to the fourth round before you even address it if you go wide receiver 2. So not having that third round pick throws
it does.
Isn't that crazy? Just one thing, and we're like, oh, gosh, if only they had that. It's like when you go looking at houses and you got X amount to spend, and all the houses that you look at that you can afford to spend, you're like, gosh, if only – I'm looking in the 400,000 range. Oh, man, I don't like any of these houses. If only I could have the one that's 475. It's got everything. And then you realize there's somebody looking at 800. He's like, I just don't like any of these houses. But if I could spend 900, all the houses that I like are that much. It's no different than we're looking at this third round pick like, man, if they just had a third round pick, that could change everything.
It's funny. Follow me here when I make this analogy, okay? But I'm just talking about value and availability in that value. This morning I needed to take an Uber to go pick up one of my cars, okay? And I had an option between the comfort option and the UberX option.
Oh.
It was only $6 difference. I chose the comfort option, right? No cars were available. Nobody would come pick me. They said, come back, try again later because all our comfort options are not unavailable right now. So I went down to the UberX, the more efficient one. Guess what? I got picked up in 10 minutes. You see? So I don't know. Sometimes the value and the availability of that value might speak more volumes than, say, because first off, cornerbacks are going to be super expensive. Anyone that's worth a salt anyway. We talk about big name tickets coming in and making a difference. Like if I were in the cornerback market for a veteran, man, you're going to pay through the nose for somebody that's really good.
Yep.
Versus taking them in a draft where you're just going to have them for 4 years on the cheap, so to speak.
Which may put them back in play for a cornerback then in the second round.
Well, the cornerback, if you look at the free agency market, because we got to get through free agency before we get to the draft, there are a lot more names for cornerback in free agency than I think there are wide receivers in terms of those top tier guys and spending big money at those positions.
Because ain't nobody gonna pay them.
That's well, I mean, we heard Diana Rossini, we've heard Chad Forbes. The Titans are going to throw money around.
Yeah,
and you're in their situation where you have so many needs at so many different positions. You're going to have to overpay somewhere. It's going to happen.
Joshua says in the chat, what did we spend the third pick on? Wasn't it Levis?
It was Levis.
Yeah, to trade for Levis. All right. It's a great discussion, and we could do this for hours. But guess what? We're almost out of hours on this show. We got one segment left, and what do we do on Friday? How do we end the show? We call our shot. You want to drop a shot in the F&M Bank chat? Do it. You want to drop a shot on the phone? 615-737-1045. That'll get you on Blaine and Mickey. Powered by All Four Seasons Garage Doors, when trust matters.
Hey, Tennessee, it's Blaine Bishop here. And with the unpredictable weather hitting us hard, it's crucial to ensure your home is equipped for any challenge. So don't let the next power outage catch you off guard. And Cool Ray Heating, Cooling, Plumbing, and Electrical has your back. And they're offering an incredible $1,500 off select at-home generators. Yes, you heard it right, $1,500 off. So don't gamble with your family's safety. Act now and secure your peace of mind with Cool Ray. If that's not enticing enough, take advantage of their $49 tune-up for your HVAC system. It's perfect for ensuring your home stays comfortable in any weather. If you've been thinking about upgrading to a new HVAC system, they're offering free estimates on replacements. And their expert comfort consultants are ready to guide you toward the perfect solution for your home. So that's Cool Ray, keeping Tennessee cool, plumbing right, and lights bright. So visit coolray.com to take control of your home's comfort and safety. That's coolray.com.
Blaine and Mickey, final segment on this Friday. We always call our shot. Brad Hopkins hanging out for the Hitman today. The perfect lineup for this, well, football, basketball, any season. Chattanooga Whiskey 91, Cask 111, and 99 Rye available at your local retailer. The perfect weekend where we are headed right now deserves the perfect pour. Chattanooga Whiskey available at your local retail store. Let's take a couple of these shots on the phone first. You want to jump in with Jake and Jason, you can do so. You don't even have to have a J name if you just don't happen to have one, but we have those all now. 615-737-1045. Jason is up first. And then Jake, what's up, Jason? What's your shot?
Shot.
Nice.
Hey, guys, I got to say, y'all can take it how y'all want it, but this is how it's going to go down, I feel like.
Okay.
Saturday, we're about to take care of business and beat the Wildcats.
Okay.
And then they're thinking we're going to just take a break, but I don't think Rick Barnes is going down like that. He wants to win it all. He wants to win the SEC championship, tournament championship, and he's going to win the NCAA tournament. Let's go. That's my shot.
My goodness.
Shot.
Wow. He's projecting well into March there. I like that. A long-distance shot. Jake in Nashville. Jake, you going to sing for us or at least rap or whatever just happened?
What you going to do, Jake?
No, sir, I'm not. But what I will say is Cane Ridge alumni Brandon Miller will go on to be the best pick of the 2023 NBA draft. You heard it here first. He's been balling out all year. He's not getting enough coverage, and he will go out to be the best player out of there. Wembanyama, no. Brandon Miller. That's the name. Y'all need to lock in. Watch him.
Man.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. We don't get a lot of NBA shots on this program. I'll take it. Nostra Levis says in the FNN Bank Chat, I'm calling my shot. Austin P wins on Sunday, goes to the big dance, and wins their first NCAA tournament game. Let's go P.
I've always loved that. Let's go P.
And people are responding and saying, they won before. I think he means their first game of the tournament, I think is well, Nostra Levis, that could be a he or a she. Do we have another called shot in there, Bananas, that I missed?
Yeah, Emmett Jones says Belmont's winning the Missouri Valley Conference basketball tournament. They're in the quarterfinals today. I think they're playing right now.
Belmont put out a graphic yesterday. Their men and women have each won 20 games for 9 years straight.
I think they're the only program who's done that.
That's what the graphic said.
Yeah.
Look, man, I don't care who you are, what you're doing. That kind of success, and then they move to the Missouri Valley. Obviously, it's more than a one-bid league typically, so it gives their teams more opportunities to play into the postseason. But hats off to everybody at Belmont and the success they've been having. So that's a cool shot as well. But 9 years of 20 wins for the men and the women, wowzers! Wow. Brad Hopkins, special guest shot. What you got, man?
So my shot is for the Saturday matchup, Kentucky Wildcats in Thompson Bowling Arena. Dalton Connect doesn't play the last 4 minutes of the game.
Oh, you think he'll be icing his knees by then, huh?
Chilling, sipping some Gatorade, because they will have the game well in control. And one of the things that made me feel that confident, JB Bananas actually reminded me of how bad Kentucky plays on the road. And here's a situation where I think Rick Barnes has his foot on the accelerator and says, hey, look, let's make a statement. Kind of like the conversation he had when Vanderbilt came into town, a game that they're supposed to win, but let's win it convincingly. Mm-hmm. That sets up the table for the SEC tournament, gives the people on Selection Sunday something to think about, the fact that we just boat raced Coach Cal's Kentucky Wildcats to end the season. Yep. So Dalton Connect is sipping Gatorade the last 4 minutes of the game on Saturday.
What flavor? What's your go-to?
See, orange is like I all we had was orange my rookie year, so I hate orange Gatorade. That's all we had. So
it broke you, huh?
Yeah.
Orange. Okay.
Now, when we got the grape Gatorade out, boy, people were like, "Yeah, this is some different stuff here." So, yeah, I don't even know if they have grape Gatorade.
They do, and
yes.
I'm on the blue and grape train.
Yes. Smurfy, huh? The blue Gatorade.
Yeah. Blue and grape.
Yeah,
that's my rule.
Yeah.
What do you call the main Gatorade, the main flavor? I'm not going to say a fruit name.
Oh, it's called lemonade, isn't it?
Well, no. They have lemonade flavored Gatorade. The lemon lime flavored Gatorade, I'll say the name, the fruits. What color do you call that? Because people only say Gatorade typically by colors.
It's yellow.
Like pea yellow.
Okay.
It's yellow.
I have called it green my whole life.
Oh my!
The green Gatorade.
They have a green Gatorade.
I
and
know
it's
that's like
cucumber.
sour apple, a cucumber Gatorade. I would rather lick the floor of this studio.
That's so gross.
I'm not going to do it.
Yeah,
but
if you don't like celery, you're not gonna like cucumber Gatorade.
Who in the lab
Sounds
thought,
nasty.
you know what we're missing here is cucumber flavor? What's more refreshing than a freaking cucumber? Bananas. Let's switch from bananas to cucumbers.
I know I've kind of been down on them these past couple days as we've been watching them in the SEC tournament, but the Lady Vols currently up 20 right now on Alabama.
Oh, now you're on the bandwagon.
If they win this game, you know who they face? South Carolina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
So
what kind of shot you going to call
I'm
on
calling
that?
the upset.
What?
I'm calling the upset.
How many games has South Carolina even lost this year?
None. They're undefeated.
That means all pressure's on the Gamecocks.
100%.
Listen. They've played them tough. It's been about between an 11 to 8-point matchups this season. Their two matchups this season. I think Tennessee gets them in the tournament. You know, the Gamecocks don't need this tournament win. I mean, they would like to have it, but they don't need it. They're going to be a 1 seed regardless. They're probably going to win the national championship regardless. So, Lady Vols pulling off the upset in the SEC tournament.
What's your shot?
Well, Bananas always says you got to do this thing big, right, or don't do it.
Lord. Here we
That's
go.
pretty big to beat South Carolina. I don't know. Mine's not that big nor that ambitious, but I'll say this. There's two people now, sources, who've said, Chad Forbes and Diana Rossini. Rossini seems to know a lot of what's going on here. The Titans are going to spend money. Now, there's not a big splash receiver per se like there has been in the past. You know, they don't need – I don't know if they'll just be names that blow people away, but in the hierarchy of free agency, I think they're going to make two big splash hires or two big splash signings, let's say, by Monday, the first day when – because that's the start of legal tampering is Monday. It's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then Wednesday afternoon is when everything becomes official. But as we all know – you start to hear about them immediately on Monday. They just show up everywhere. I think the Titans are going to be that team or one of the teams that blow people out of the water on Monday. There's enough buzz about them spending money. Even if they don't spend to the level of the Jags 2 years ago, I think they're going to pull off a couple of big names for their positions on Monday to get things rolling.
Doing a Bonnie Raitt, huh? Give them something to talk about.
Oh, let's do it. By the way, we don't have anything else left to talk about because we got to go.
I know that's right.
Time for us to get out of here. 3HL's coming up next, but you know how we end it.
But in the meantime,
In between time, peace.